Jake Paul has had everyone under an illusion. How exactly? Well, it's all to do with his boxing career and how he's created an image far greater than he can sustain. This is exactly how Jake Paul managed to trick people into believing he's far better at boxing than he actually is. Jake Paul fought Deji on August the 25th, 2018. The fight wasn't easy, especially in the opening rounds, but eventually as Deji got worn out and his gas tank went, Jake Paul got the better of him, with the towel thrown in on Deji's side. Jake Paul had been training prior to this, and this was the first show in his ability. Although it wasn't amazing, Jake Paul had laid the foundation for his boxing career. His next fight was against Gibb. He had jumped to professional at this point. Gibb was undefeated and was definitely a tough opponent.
Corners him and he's trying to bully Jay Swingler. It's just non-stop pressure from Gibbo. He needs to actually be more aggressive himself because Gibbo's having it all his own way here.
Also, we thought in the build to this fight, Gibb had 2 exhibitions at this point and was looking tough. He had a high work rate and put pressure on his opponents, something Jake Paul may not have been able to handle. But when the fight happened, something was different and Gibb wasn't fighting like he normally did.
As well. Crouching in a very unorthodox.
That's what he needs to do. If he wants to take control of the fight, he needs to start with the jab.
And that's the guy that tends to take control of the fight early.
Yes, you got to earn that respect. You have to earn that respect.
Nearly losing it.
He was nowhere near as good as he previously was and appeared to walk around like a crab. This was a completely dubbed down Gibb. This only benefited Jake Paul. He was able to KO Gibb in the first round by keeping his distance from Gibb and landing 3 knockdowns. He, in fairness, was able to stay calm and control this fight, keeping his distance and hitting Gibb with good shots. But Gibb had gone through wars and won, so many were shocked when he didn't at least withstand these shots. Gibb was seen as this monster, but didn't perform in this fight, and the fact that Jake Paul won so easily made people think Jake Paul was amazing, because Gibb had put on amazing performances before this, and for Jake Paul to beat him in the first round put Jake Paul at a really high level. Jake Paul was on top of the world, and yeah, I know he just beat a FIFA YouTuber, but it's Jake Paul. What do you expect? But after only fighting 2 YouTubers, he stopped fighting YouTubers. Did he go on to fight boxers or, you know, people that could actually fight? He fought his first, get ready, basketball player, and his confidence was through the roof after that KO.
You were saying, oh, Jake's never fought a real athlete.
Am I lying? Have you? You haven't. No, you haven't. You're fighting only YouTube. You and your brother only fight YouTubers. That's it, bro. So you're gonna fight a real athlete for the first time in your life.
Who have you fought? You fought nobody.
Don't worry, I ain't fight nobody. I fight you. I'm gonna fight you. I'm gonna beat your ass. I'm gonna beat your ass too.
You're boring and
Thank you for the question.
The only thing... Oh, why is it shaking so? The only thing this actually did was elevate his status even more. He's a retired basketball player, an athlete, yes, but a boxer, not at all. The fact he's fighting an athlete immediately made people think he has a chance. But that means nothing, and we were proven exactly that. Jake Paul also fought this man when he was 37 years old, so past his physical prime. Nate Robinson is also 5'9", while Jake Paul is around 6 foot tall. Every advantage was with Jake Paul, literally in every single way. But Jake Paul somehow had to make this seem like a good fight, so he played the angle that he was an athlete. What did this do? It made Jake Paul seem like he's taking on someone who at least had a chance. So when Jake Paul eventually KO'd him, a KO is a KO.
No shit.
People were impressed. I honestly have no idea. His performance was, don't get me wrong, fine, but he couldn't handle the few times he was pressured and used the fact that Nate Robinson had literally no defense to land a lucky overhand. But the effect was kicking in and people started to think he was some sort of insane boxer.
Oh! Oh my god! Yo! Oh my god!
No, it's over.
Oh my god!
He was back-to-back KOs and back-to-back-to-back wins, and it seems like that's all people cared about. Not who he fought, but the fact he put on an average performance against a retired basketball player. But it continued from here, and this next fight was about to fuel this illusion even more. Yes, he was about to take on Ben Askren, but what's the context? Oh, he's old, retired, past his prime, and not fighting in what he knows, which is MMA, but in boxing. Now let's look at his clips. Okay, There we go. But the public at the time, including me, think it's Ben Askren, right? I mean, he's a UFC legend, and we believe that this fight may have been close because of how Jake Paul made us fall into this illusion. Right, so this MMA legend is who he's fighting. Not this old guy, but the MMA legend, right? So now Ben Askren might win, right?
Bang, shot to the body shot to them ribs. Bang, right to the motherfucking head.
He's a fucking bad boy.
What the
Jake Paul sparred with champion Jean Pascal and also cruiserweight contender.
What should have happened happened. In Jake Paul's eyes, he just knocked out an MMA legend who was really good at fighting, and therefore his ego goes up and his confidence increases like crazy.
I guarantee you that if Canelo and I fight one day, if he's dumb enough to get into the ring with me, I will beat his fucking ass.
But he wasn't going to stop anytime soon, and his next fight was even more extreme. Tyron Woodley.
Oh! Kim might be hurt. Woodley looking to finish. Tyron Woodley. Oh, there it is. Tagged him. Big shot. Tyron Woodley in the new.
His first real challenge. The MMA legend who was Jake Paul's next victim of cherry picking. Why Tyron Woodley? Well, he's known as a solid striker and is a huge name in MMA. Catch him just off his prime and make sure the fighter is shorter than you, so you have the physical advantage as a start. The fact this man was fighting for years and years and had some tough KOs meant that people saw this as someone who would just destroy Jake Paul. So when the fight came about and Jake Paul won, he had just accelerated to the next level. But Tyron wasn't that bad, and you're right, he wasn't too bad and even gave Jake Paul a real fight. But the fact I'm saying that shows you Jake Paul really wasn't meant to be in there. What I mean is, Tyron Woodley barely threw any punches at all, and this fight went all 8 rounds, plus the fact that when Woodley even landed a solid shot, the fight almost ended. This shows that Jake Paul versus prime Tyron Woodley, who was active and a lot more aggressive, would have been over. This fight was kind of close with Tyron barely throwing anything. Jake Paul's illusion still held strong though, as it's technically a win against a pro fighter, and he seemed very legit. But something I can't really excuse is his next fight, where he KO'd Tyron Woodley cold.
And has done it from time to time, just hasn't been.
The past fights were all fights to play into this illusion, that Jake Paul was a lot better than he actually was. Although this illusion almost broke with the past fight, this fight specifically cemented him as a real fighter. There's no taking away from the fact that he KO'd Tyron out cold. It's impressive. And yes, even though Tyron Woodley was in his 40s and still fairly inactive in this fight, Jake Paul did set up a good shot and capitalized on Tyron's weakness. It showed Jake Paul had at least a bit of skill and knowledge, and to an extent knows what he's doing. But that is expected after being in the game for as long as he was. This standalone would put him in a decent fighter level, you know, an average fighter that fights in the mid card. But the fact that this followed multiple KOs, not considering who he KO'd, and the fact that he had an undefeated record, he was pushed to an insane level. Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva. Again, MMA legend. This is the closest Jake has gotten to fighting an actual boxer up until this point. This is because Anderson Silva had been in some boxing fights and had a few wins. Was he a boxer? No. He was an MMA fighter who had some boxing fight. This is also a person, interestingly, who was even taller than Jake Paul. So it seemed like Jake Paul was progressing in terms of the difficulty in his opponents. As I say, it seemed that way. The fight wasn't easy for Jake, but Jake did show that he'd at least learned something after all this time. He was still not great at handling pressure, but he managed to beat a fighter. He was coping, but that honestly was about it. Yes, he threw a few decent combinations here and there, but this wasn't consistent. He simply wanted to survive in there. Anderson Silva was very old, he was retired, and he is an MMA fighter, but he still was Anderson Silva, and there was something to respect. Even though again, this win against Anderson Silva wasn't crazily impressive. There was no TKO or KO, but Jake Paul had gone from being quite bad at boxing to decent, but played it like he was good this whole time. As the years went on, he genuinely improved to a point where he could kind of keep up with the reputation. Still, however, he hadn't fought anyone to give him a real test. However, this illusion came to an end is exactly where you thought it would. He chose to fight an active boxer.
That worked well for him in the opening couple of rounds. It's a good start to the round here from Tommy Fury, who's starting to let his hands go. That was a good shot though, as Fury was moving away. It's the first real big bit of success that Jake Paul's had, and that's going to give him encouragement.
2 to go. Sean Porter's got it all.
By the way, Tommy Fury isn't at this high level. Tommy Fury is a decent average boxer. So if Jake Paul was an average decent boxer or better, he would have drawn or beat Tommy, right? He was getting paid more than Tommy, getting way more opportunities, and Jake Paul was the A side. Surely he's a better boxer? No. Not at all. He got dominated for all the rounds, and it wasn't even that close at all. So if Tommy Fury is an average boxer and Jake Paul is meant to be better than him or just on the same level, surely it would have been at least close, right? He couldn't handle pressure, got picked apart from the very start, and that was about it. Has the illusion cracked? Yes. People started to realize that Jake Paul was actually beatable. People realized that Jake Paul isn't as good as he made it seem, and it only seemed that way because he talked so much and because he KO'd the people he did. Up until this point, he had one good performance. Apart from that, he was almost less than an average boxer. Obviously, Jake Paul was going to be in the spotlight because he's Jake Paul. But these few KOs he had, along with the fact that he's a YouTuber, meant he was pushed in front of everyone, the main event of every card. Now skip to the present, his fight with Nate Diaz was sloppy. He wasn't sharp at all, and Nate Diaz also wasn't sharp, and Jake Paul couldn't finish the job. Again, he's gone back to fighting MMA fighters he knows he can beat, to rebuild his record and to rebuild this illusion. There's no way his next fight is going to be someone he could potentially lose to. It's either an MMA fighter or someone like Joe Fournier, who is a boxer but way past their prime and can't really box that well anymore. The chance that he fights someone active in the boxing scene is the same as the chance Jake Paul's hairline finds its way back on his head. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm aiming to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I'm about 40% there, so please consider subscribing. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.